This is your show. I just come and
Welcome to This Week in Real
show up to
Estate with
make you look
Jonathan
better.
Harmon. Listen in
It's
as
a
him
tough
and
chore.
other members of the J. Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
There you are. Good morning. Happy what is today? May. It's the middle of May, right?
All right.
Like officially today.
The 15th.
Yeah.
Day after Mother's Day, all that good
Ides of
stuff.
May. Oh wait, we don't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's
Okay.
just March.
Gotcha.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know. I always got to watch my back. No, anyway, that's a whole other situation. So anyway, it's Jonathan Harmon with J. Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And I've got my friend Brad Hopkins here, realtor over at Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates, and generally smart dude as well. I always enjoy talking to him. So anyway, I was going to say something snide, but honestly, I haven't had enough coffee, so I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
super
tough.
sharp.
Monday.
about that.
Got to get that on a Tuesday if you want the full sarcasm, right?
That's it. So, Brad, you've been on here a couple times with me before, and it occurred to me, and if I did, I don't remember it, so that's bad. But I don't think we've ever really gotten like your story, have we?
I don't think
Maybe
so.
the very first time.
Maybe. I don't know. The first time we had like 5 people and we were pretty crowded in
That's right.
Brasshorn, so probably not
That's
there.
that's right. That was
So
a state of the market address.
yeah,
Yeah. That was
yeah.
a fun one too. But so I would like to hear a little bit about your story. How did you get into real estate? What'd you do before? All that stuff.
Well, I'd done a few things before, but I always kind of had it in the background. It had a rental property here and there, bought and sold my own stuff. So you kind of always feel like it's kind of intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
And I came from a corporate sales background, and I wanted something that felt a little more service oriented. Like I don't look at this as a sales job. I look at it as a service job. And that kind of throws back to what we were talking about before we started recording, kind of being back in the hospitality industry and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of liked that idea of it. And then my hand kind of got forced, I guess. I wouldn't say forced, but my company got bought by one of the massive public things, and it wasn't a fun place to work anymore. So I
Sure.
started putting back money to make the jump and hadn't looked back. So it's been
Yeah.
about 5 years ago, but it was kind of one of those things where it's always something I thought about doing. And then it just got to an environment where I was working. I was like, it's now or never.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put like a year and a half worth of salary back, and the end of a year, if I only have 6 months left, I'll go job hunting.
Right.
And
You're on the clock at that point.
yeah, right. And so, fortunately, it never came to that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that went.
That's pretty cool. Similar story, different background, but similar story. Sometimes the best decisions that we make are made for us.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely my case. I got fired from teaching. That's how it felt. Everybody's like, "No, you got non-renewed." I'm like, felt a heck of a lot like being fired. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to classify what actually happened, but it sure felt like getting fired. Didn't make the papers, y'all. Don't worry.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah,
a
no,
plus.
it wasn't anything like that. But anyway, so that happened, and this was in 2009 for me, and it was like, if I'm ever going to do this, I'm cut off of all the things that tie you to a job, right? Insurance, all that stuff.
Right.
It's like you said, it's now or never.
So
So, what did you join Exit right away?
I did.
Okay. And what is it about that? What is it about your company that was so attractive, and I mean, honestly, retention 5 years, that's not bad.
Yeah. No. Starting out, it was just kind of I had known Bob for years, like back to an MTSU student when I used to be a Raider rep and wear the blue jacket and
You got to wear a blue blazer?
Yeah, I wore the blue
Oh,
blazer,
man.
man.
I'm so jealous right now, I can't stand
it
it.
never left me. I just keep
Yeah.
wearing a blue blazer. So yeah, and he was one of the people that I would meet and take care of. And then,
Sure.
I was always kind of active in the BRAA, so we had a pretty strong connection there. Richard was a former president with
Mhm.
Chips there. Like there was just kind of a strong connection. So that's where I just was kind of like, well, that's where I'm gonna go start. And then when I got there, there's just such a culture of, everybody there is pulling for all young agents to succeed. I think probably similar to Keller, there's a little bit of buy-in, everybody gets a little piece of it kind of thing. So there's some real incentive. And then, I just really like the way they do business, the way they take care of people. They always, every meeting they had kind of an expression. People would talk about contracts and, this happened, that happened. And the response was, well, we do what's right. We do what's right because it's right. If it's not good for you, that doesn't mean anything. You do what's right because it's right. And that just kind of stuck with me. And I've just kind of become a little part of the family there. So,
and rarely is that hard to determine. You know what I mean? Like rarely is it hard to say, okay, well, what's the right thing to do in this?
right.
Every now and then it's like, okay, someone's going to get screwed in this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But rarely is it like, okay, well, this is really obvious what the right thing is.
Yeah.
That's almost always the case.
Generally speaking, yeah, I would say. But, I think that personally, a lot of times it's not right for you. And
That's right.
that's where the trouble comes. So,
yeah.
But they were, and they just took good care of me from the start. So
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and super active at MTSU. That's a big plus. So that's pretty cool as well.
yeah,
So Brad and I are actually on the BRAA board together, along with Brian. That will show you. Hey,
may have already shown them. I don't know how that.
No better time than the present, Trent.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Brian Nail.
Great idea.
Man, we did a great transition.
That's an awesome segue, wasn't it?
Hey, my name is Brian Nail. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Primis Bank Mortgage. I want to tell you that I absolutely love being a member of the Spread the Positive Network. It's such a great mission and helps bring so much positivity to our community. It's truly a pleasure to be part of. There are a lot of ways to navigate financing a home, and in markets like this, having the advice of a trusted local professional is key to making sure you get the right advice for your specific circumstances. Whether you're interested in the purchase of a new home, second home, or have a need for a refinance, I'd love to earn your trust. If I can help you nail your mortgage, call me at 615-243-3976 or visit nailyourmortgage.com.
Primis Mortgage is a subsidiary of Primis Bank, a member FDIC, equal housing opportunity. As always, all loans are subject to approval. Primis Mortgage, NMLS number 1894879.
Man, and we are so happy to have your sponsorship, but also your partnership here on the Spread the Positive Network. So I figure we're going to dive in and do some real number looking today. I actually just sent an email out to my mailing list, which, by the way, if you want to be on my mailing list, just comment or whatever. I guess you can put your email in the comments. I probably wouldn't, but you can send it to me,
but
and we'll get you added.
You might get emails from every realtor in town.
Every single one of them. Okay, so side note, the funniest thing on Facebook to me always is the realtor roll call post.
Yep. Anybody know a realtor? I'm like, oh my God.
There we go.
Hold on to your seat,
200
friends.
comments later.
Yeah, in like 20 minutes.
And I'll go ahead and tell you, like, I have told my friends not to put me on that because A, it's just I don't want the 800 notifications, like when
Right.
you get tagged in it. But B, in this day and age, like, I'm a little concerned if you have to go to City of Murfreesboro Facebook to ask for a realtor. I don't know that you're socially engaged enough that we're gonna like
gel very
well.
well.
Like
No.
I'm probably not your guy.
So true story. One of those it's probably been 2 years ago. Somebody did that, and they got like literally 500 responses, right? And about, I don't know, a day later, I get an email. Hey, and it was the same person, and they were marketing. They built their own. They created a marketing list of all the.
They're
realtors.
selling products.
Mhm.
Oh man, it reminds me of that meme, like it's like a realtor holding a stack of money, and it's like real estate agent, and then it's like guy that sells real estate agent support products, and
Yeah,
he's
it's
like in a bed of money.
Uncle
Like-
Scrooge, the money bin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. How do you make $1 million in real estate? Find something to sell to realtors.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no doubt. But what I do find interesting about those roll calls though is, number one, every single agent that's listed on those, every one of them is amazing.
Mhm.
That's what it says.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This person
100%.
was absolutely amazing. And so I kind of wonder, or hands down the best, like every single response.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, golly, there must be a lot of great agents in this area. And then like I'll do some transactions and I'm like, well, that person must not have been on the list because they were not hands down
they
amazing.
were not amazing.
Yeah.
And well, you know, I mean, your average person's going to
not any of my current deals going, by the way.
Right,
if
right. They're all fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. Hands down.
Yeah, you know, well, it's always funny when somebody says that too. It's like, oh, well, you dealt with them once, you know. Like, I mean, I'm glad. I would want people to say that about me too, right? I
Sure.
would hope they would, but you know, it's just funny when
It is. I love that. So amazing is actually banned. Amazing and rock star are both banned words on my team. You're not allowed to use.
You're not a
else.
rock star realtor. What about top
Mm.
producer? Can you do top producer?
Sure. I'm okay with that, but rock star, absolutely not. Absolutely. If you want to see me rock, you don't. I promise.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Let's talk numbers. Sorry about that. Just I always like to talk about that with other amazing hands down realtors. So right now, let's talk kind of the state of the market, right? I've got numbers sitting here from April 2023. I like to look at the year over year. So what does April of 2023 look like compared to April of 2022?
Right.
This particular report that we're looking at takes into account all of the counties that are served by RealTrack. So this isn't broken out by Rutherford County. Which how many counties is that for RealTrack? Is it 28 or something?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a lot.
If you know, comment because I can't remember, but it's a bunch. It's like the third or fourth largest geographic area in the country covered by one MLS. Did you know that?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. It's top 5 for sure. So anyway, pretty interesting. If I have to pick one word to describe our market right now, I know what my one word is. What would your one word be to describe our market right now?
Right this second, I would say changing. Like I feel like we are, you know, getting back into that end of spring, early summer kind of volume. I think people have accepted the interest rates as what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about to turn to challenging. It's not there yet, but I think it's about to be a really challenging market for buyers in particular. But you know, most of your sellers are going to become buyers, so it's just a challenge out there.
Well, the last time that we talked about the market at all, you and I specifically, we talked about how there's kind of this little window, and rates gave pause, and it said, okay, you know, a lot of buyers just pulled out to kind of hold their breath, wait and see, and there was this little window, and I actually saw you post, I don't know, maybe a month ago, that window is actively closing as we speak. I still say though that we're still going through a process. There's pendulum swings all the time, right? Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're little. But I still think we're going into a more of a normalizing market. And the seasonal bump that you're talking about is normal, right? So that April, May, especially May, June, that window, historically, that's when the majority of our gains for the year happen, right? So we might actually be flat or even decline January, February, like pricing and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden it spikes April, May, June, whenever it gets warm, right? That's the magic date, whatever that happens to be. And then July, a lot of times will taper off, and then we'll take a little hit, you know,
right when
August,
school starts back.
Yeah, exactly. And then you might normalize, you know, flatten out again. You might even take another little hit when it gets cold, depending on when that happens. But the majority, if you plot it out for the year, it's not even. So if we go up 12%, it's not 1% a month.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you pulled this report, but I always go to the info tracks one where you can see the peaks and valleys. And I think we're going to hit. And I might disagree with you a little bit on the normalizing. Of course, who knows what normal is anymore now if you look at the last few years. But I just think we're going to get this collision of, still feel like rates are going to dip.
I agree.
I feel like all those people that are on the sidelines are going to come into the market. And then I think that that builder pause that we saw at the end of last year, which they've not paused now, they're back blowing and going. Well, but they're not going to be completing stuff at the rate that they were because of that pause 6-8 months ago.
What's the number right now? It's way high. If you look at the MLS currently for Rutherford County specifically, it's like 37% or something of all the active listings are new construction.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. It was over half for a while. And so
normal's like 20.
Right. And it's kind of been that way for a minute, but I think that's going to get exponentially worse because I think you're going to see, on a whole, existing homes they're going to have a life event to move. Um, just
especially if they're sitting at 2%,
That's my point,
2
right?
or
So
3%.
you're not going to have new construction being completed. You're going to have people just going to take some major convincing. They're going to have a life change to want to get off that 2.5% rate, right?
Mhm.
Like and then you're going to have these people that have come off the sidelines that have been just kind of waiting to see what rates are going to do. And, I think we're through the hike part of it and we may see some dips, but I think when we start getting in that 6.25, 6%, 5.9, those people are going to come flooding off the sidelines
Sure.
and there's not going to be any inventory for them.
And
And I think it's,
maybe, and the thing is, like, you look at April. So right now we're or for the month of April, we were at almost 3.5 months of inventory. We had been sitting at 1.2, 1.1.
mhm,
This is market wide again. So Rutherford County was actually a little lower.
mhm,
But we're at just barely a month worth of inventory sitting on the market. And it's not evenly distributed. I know there's problems quoting that because Middle Tennessee is not really a real estate market like Berkshire is a real estate market.
right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And but so we're seeing some of that happen. And I am curious. I really am. I'm curious what's going to happen when rates, and they're relatively stable right now, 6.5 ish,
Mhm,
right? Depending on all kinds of things that those things depend on,
right.
6.75 even. But if we do hit and stay, because we've dipped a couple times, we've hit that 5.875
Mhm.
in the last 4 months, twice that I remember. Um, will it really create that flood? Is it pent up demand from people that are currently homeowners, or is it people that are staying in rental? Like, where is the pent up demand right now? My point being, if it's a whole bunch of homeowners, then it might work itself out,
Right.
and especially if they buy some new construction and put existing homes.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I feel like a lot of it is gonna be from the rental. I feel like a lot of it, is still from that 20 people a day that are moving here, but they haven't been buying homes, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's kinda where I think it's at, and then you see all the people that are like, "Well, what we thought we could afford, we can't afford," and so I just think it led to a lot of pause, and I think that's gonna change. Um, if you I did some numbers back in, off the March numbers, and if you looked at it, we had a pretty good little spike in March. I think we sold, what was it, 650 homes or something like that in
Mhm.
Rutherford County.
Mhm.
I don't have it off the top of my head anymore. But then you went back in and you looked at the houses on the market. And this was the big change from last year, right? Last year there was no new construction on the market because they weren't listing it. They were making you come to them.
Right.
They
They had
weren't
waiting
listing
lists of
until it's
100 people.
right. And
Mhm.
so there was none of it. And now when you look at almost 60% of it was new construction when I did the numbers, and you figure that there were actual homes available to move into was significantly less than a month
Right.
of inventory.
Right. Right.
So, if those people come off the sidelines, I just think it gets real tight.
It is very interesting though that that sector of the market definitely normalized in their actions though,
Right.
right? Having 150, there was one about 16 months ago had 150 people on waiting list for a subdivision that was only going to build 20 more houses.
Yeah.
And they were requiring payment over asking price,
Mhm.
and I mean it was insane.
Yep.
$25,000 non-refundable just to like reserve a lot,
Yep.
if they would even do it for you. And they
Yeah,
may
and
not.
most of them didn't wanna do that because it
And
was going up so
selections, forget it. You
yep,
didn't get to choose anything,
yep.
nothing. And cutting our pay. And I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah. If they didn't try to cut you out altogether, which was a
mhm,
big part of it, and I
mhm,
actually live in a neighborhood full of that, and it's amazing the things that they're all complaining about that they didn't. I'm like, "What? How'd your agent let that happen?" "Well, we didn't have one."
mhm.
Yeah, yeah. They're like
Mistake
things
number 1.
they were told. They were like, I mean, that Facebook page, neighborhood Facebook page, "They're cutting down all the trees in the lot behind us, and the selling agent told us that couldn't happen." I'm like, "How did they tell you that? They don't own that lot." Like
Right,
like, yeah, that
right.
lot belongs to another developer, so, like,
Yeah.
why would your agent let you think that could happen?
And
And they're like, "They didn't have an agent."
now the story is totally different,
No.
right? Like there's one builder right now that I mean, if if I didn't read it better, I don't even know that I still think that I'm probably at least a little bit right. There was almost fear in a contract that we negotiated in January, and
Yeah.
it was like, we don't want to get stuck with this house. So they were requiring they were going to choose to not even do a contract rather than some of the things that they did that told me. I mean, they had some non-refundable stuff in there. They were not taking a home sale contingency at all.
Mhm.
And I mean, there was all kinds of little bits and pieces that I'm like, you're scared you're going to get left holding a bunch of market homes. That's
Mhm.
what this sounds like. And so that was a weird moment to kind of read between the lines on what they
Yeah.
were doing. But all that being said, the ability to negotiate is a little bit back. Right now,
Mhm.
there are some price points where that's not the case. You're sub 400 in Rutherford County, you're not negotiating jack right
You're right.
now, but that big swell of inventory, that what we do have that's available, that's actually sitting for more than 6 hours,
Mhm.
is that kind of like 450, 500, somewhere right in there,
Right.
to what, maybe 700 somewhere. It's kind of that upper, and it's a little bit flexible based on exactly where you are in the county,
Right.
um, and people, I mean, houses are sitting for a week,
Mhm.
which is an eternity, based on
Well, and that's why I say, what do you mean by normal, right? Like a week's not normal in my mind,
still
or
not
2 weeks
it's
normal is not
normaler though.
more. Yeah, well, that's more normal for sure. But it's I still wouldn't think of that as normal. And like I said, I think that may trend slightly worse as we move forward.
Yeah.
So I still think it's going to be a pretty challenging.
And I think that's why that's why, especially a 2, 3, 4 year historical look back
Hmm.
is the only time that we get true clarity, right? But I feel like part of the process of normalizing is, again, that pendulum swing,
Hmm.
right? But here's the thing: we hit 7.5% interest rates before the end of last year, right?
Right.
And the market didn't just die,
Right.
right? The bubble didn't bust, right? Which is what everybody, oh my gosh,
Right.
doom and gloom. As a matter of fact, when you look at, one of the numbers that's in here, I thought this was interesting. Um, we lost, quote unquote, lost average sales price. April to April was down 3%.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you want to compare last April to this April, we're 3%. We lost 3% of value. But if you look at 2022 to 2021, we were up 23%.
Right.
So we're still up 20% over a 2-year time frame.
Yeah.
That's not a bubble busting.
That well, and not only that, but one thing to keep in mind too is that doesn't necessarily mean that the individual houses lost 3%.
This is the
That's
market.
the people's buying power went, so that your house may still be worth $500,000. There's just less people. The guy that was going to buy your $500,000 house can't buy it anymore because of rates. So
But they can afford it at
at
475.
475, but my point is your house may still sell for 500. They're just buying a smaller, different house.
Mhm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that the home values individually have gone down much,
That's true.
because people are just buying differently than they were.
Well, and especially what that also means is that potentially, especially as we slide up that number, line there, there's just plain fewer people that could buy your house,
Right.
right?
Which is why you may have to, and that's the thing you have to tell them now is, hey, this isn't last year. You got to have a little patience. If you want to get your price, just expect it to be on the market a little longer because you're dealing with fewer people that can buy that at that
Well,
price point.
and what it really does is, on that setting expectations, is we have to, again, finally have the conversation with our sellers. Okay, what's the most important thing to you?
Right.
Is it squeezing every penny out of this, and it doesn't matter how long it takes, right? Is it, we have a time frame, we've got to get it, we got to make something happen in the next 6 weeks. Okay,
Mhm.
well, that's a different strategy, right? So how do we approach that, and what are the things that we should be saying to those potential sellers, especially the existing home sales? Maybe they don't have a life event, because I agree with you. That's the majority of the listings right now. There's some kind of life event
Mhm.
where, divorce, death, birth, job transfer, marriage,
Yeah.
whatever, graduation, empty nesters,
The
whatever.
what are they? The 5 or 6 Ds, divorce, diamonds, diplomas, that whole thing. Like,
I've not heard that, but I need to hear
yeah,
more.
it's what it they all go together. So it's diapers and death, diplomas and diamonds and divorce, and like they're kind of one
Yeah.
off the other. And then there's diplomas, and disposable income. So it's what was that, 6 Ds?
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
I will be stealing that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what are you telling people right now? Okay, I call you
Literally
up.
what you just said is like, okay, if you want to squeeze every penny out of this, we may have to sit for a minute, and we may have to, and there's always risk in that too, because once you sit for a minute, it's that whole you're
There's a
falling to the
balance.
bottom. So I still kind of go back to what I did a few years ago is, hey, we're gonna give this 2 weeks at the top. Um, and then we'll get back to, what I think may be. And if we get it, great. But if we sit on the market longer than 2 weeks, then we're probably starting to drift into that dead zone. And that's only if we're kind of overpriced anyway, right? Like if we're
Mhm.
priced where we need to be, then
And it's
I'll
based
give
on
it a month.
activity,
Right.
right? I mean, if we sit for 2 weeks, but we've had 35 showings,
Yeah. But at that, even if you've got 35 showings and nobody's pulling the trigger, you probably overpriced.
well,
And
and
it's
then is
a
it
tough.
price or is it the fact that your house smells like cats?
Right. There's so many things that go into it, but I generally just try to individually, depending on our price. If we're what I think is at the top of the envelope,
Mhm.
then we can only really stay there for 2 weeks because you're only the hot property for 2 weeks.
That's right.
And then when we move
That's
to the
optimistic sometimes.
right, yeah, and so then after that, we've got to kind of move to the middle of the envelope and get, you know, I'll let it sit there a little longer, but and you've just got to manage expectations as they're just not going as fast. The average days on the market is higher. It's still a seller's market, but it's not
Right.
it's
Well,
not
and
what it was.
that's the big point right now, and I think this is the real story out of this. Has the market changed? Absolutely.
Mm.
Right? Has it changed for the worse for sellers? Not for the worst. Has it gotten a little bit tougher for a
Yeah.
seller than it was, 2 years ago? Yes, but it was not normal 2
No,
years ago.
right.
But it's also gotten just a little teensy weensy softer for that buyer.
Mm.
But then the buyers are like, "Oh, the bottom's falling out. Let's do this."
And you're like, no, it's
And
not.
so what do you tell that buyer? Hey, this house has been on the market for 10 days. Let's offer them, 30% less than what they're listed at.
Yeah, yeah. You just have to. I mean, at the end of the day, I work for you and I'll do it. But I'm going to strongly recommend if you're serious about getting this house, let's not insult them with that offer and let's
Right.
let's do something realistic. Here's what the comps to that one have sold for in the last month. They're going to hold out for that unless they're getting some really bad advice.
Mhm.
So or they're desperate.
Right.
And
Sometimes you can
sometimes
smell
you can
that.
make that call and call the other agent. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Bring me an offer no matter what. We'll make it work. Like,
And then,
okay.
but then you always got to wonder, is that the agent or is that the seller?
Yeah.
You know?
So
All right. What about listing prep? So this has been an interesting one. So not just setting the expectation about how long you're going to wait and pricing and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. I have changed how I'm prepping listings lately. Like even, you know, 16 months ago, do we need to paint? Do we need to do this?
Mhm.
And it's like, no. You need to throw a little fresh mulch down, mow the yard, and let's
Yeah.
go. Right. Now it's like, yeah, we probably ought to consider carpet. We probably ought to consider some paint. We probably ought to consider, some of these
Mhm.
things. How do you balance that? What is the conversation that you have with someone to balance? Because nobody wants to put, $10,000 in a house they're leaving.
Right.
No one wants to do that.
No, absolutely not. And it really just depends on how bad it is. We can do a lot of magic with video and pictures and all that, but at the end of the day, when somebody walks in the house and they feel catfished, it doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
So, we've got to make the house look as good as we can. And, I try to have that list of people that can do it at a reasonable price and just be able to show them the difference. Hey, these are your houses in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Look at the difference of this one. And like you see the difference in these two houses and look at the difference in what they went for, there's always been kind of a balance, right? Like it really depending on, how quick they want to get out of it. Cause I've seen people go put a bunch of money in and that worked great 2 years ago when things were going for 30,000 over asking. But certain things you start doing, you throw money in your house. Well, that's not going to help your appraisal. If things are
Right.
going for appraised value,
Right.
which they are again now, right? Like that's
Or
generally
less,
or
occasionally.
occasionally, then a countertop's a countertop. So you got to be real careful about getting into that that kind of thing. Like if they're awful and they're going to deter the selling of your house, then we need to address that. But if if these are just things you're thinking HGTV tells me to refresh and upgrade, that's not necessarily the best strategy either.
Right.
But paint does a lot of wonders. Even just going in and putting in brighter light bulbs and some different
Mhm.
things that I'm like, hey, let's get rid of those yellow light bulbs and let's get this thing brightened up. And
Well, and I,
so,
I like to tell people that there's a difference in value, right? That's a loaded word,
hmm
and essentially curb appeal or saleability,
hmm
right? We paint for saleability. It has nothing, I mean, virtually nothing to do
do
with
with value
value.
exactly.
We might put carpet in because honestly, you've trashed this carpet. It's almost like deferred maintenance at
Yeah,
this point. Again, is it going to help your value? Carpet maybe marginally,
not much.
but if you spend 5 grand on carpet, it might help your value. It might be the difference in benefit of the doubt for $1,000,
Right,
maybe. And even then, it's a judgment call, you know, by the appraiser. That is.
right.
So yeah, so we have a lot of those conversations. There was a list that I remember seeing. Oh my gosh, way before the market went bananas. So probably 6, 7 years ago, and it was the impact of certain renovations or certain updates, or I think it used the word updates,
hmm
and the percent return on investment. And do you know, so countertops, you mentioned that countertops was like a 35% return on investment. I mean, it was way low, right?
hmm
You know what the number one thing on there that was the highest return on investment, which I have no idea how they calculated this. Okay. So
Right.
it was just they saying this. All right.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. You know what the number one thing was?
No clue.
Paint the front door.
That's I could believe that because there's so little investment in it anyway, right?
Mhm. And
So
it's your first impression.
right.
Think about it. You're standing there messing with the stupid lockbox, right? And that's
hmm
all they're doing is staring at the front door.
Yeah. No,
So
that
that's the first impression. That's what they think about,
uh,
whether they mean to or not.
yeah,
Going
that
in,
makes a lot of sense because you're talking a $20 investment, so
right?
that's got to give you a good return.
Yeah, it was like 180% return on investment.
Well, I mean, so you made an extra $60, but no, if it helps you with the saleability though,
Right.
that's the thing.
And people neglect it. And man, those things take a beating.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, and especially when you got dogs and kids and all those sorts of things. Like
Hmm.
it's definitely one of the things. I've got one that's listed right now that's unfortunately one of the 6Ds, and they had done a ton of renovations, over the last few years, and we've got this big long renovation list, and it's like, yeah, that's great. I don't know that we're going to get back your full return, but I mean, the house is a showpiece though because of it. But
Sure.
it's we still may be on that upper end of the envelope though because they've done so much to it, and we're
Yeah.
trying to get some of that back. So,
Yeah. And that's always a tough situation
mhm.
to sit in, because then it's like we did this to enjoy it.
Yeah,
It's like what I tell people with a swimming pool. Let's say you spend 65K putting an in-ground swimming pool. Or I don't even know. That's probably low nowadays,
yeah,
especially if you're blowing rock out and stuff. But let's say you put 65K in that swimming pool. Are you going to get 65K worth of value out of it? Value,
yeah.
right?
4 years ago, I would have said no. But right now, in the last 2 years, and we'll see what kind of this summer does, because there was such a wait list for pools,
Hmm.
I was seeing 70, 80, 90 grand difference in
Really?
the individual neighborhoods, house with pool, house without pool. You could go back and you could see that difference. And that was never the case for years and years and
But will an
years.
appraiser give that? Because generally they don't. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like if they were paying attention to recent trend, I mean, it would be one of those things we may have to go back and forth
yeah,
on with the appraiser. But I mean,
I'd
like
be curious.
there was a huge difference in houses with pools over through the COVID,
Post COVID.
yeah,
Yeah,
there because just like everything else, everybody had a lot of cash. They couldn't go anywhere.
yeah,
So I mean, think about how many people you knew that
that's
put a
true.
pool in the last couple of
That's true.
years. There was such a long wait list, and the value for them just went through the roof.
Well, what I always told people was, does it matter? Right. So, and here's what I mean by that. If you spent 65K on that pool and it gave you 20K on your appraisal,
Yeah,
okay, it gave you 20K worth of value to your house. From the time that you put it in to the time you sell it, are you going to enjoy it $45,000 worth? If the
right.
answer to that is yes, put the pool in.
Yeah.
Right. If the answer to that is no, and it's a pure numbers thing,
Yeah, right.
don't put the pool in.
Well, and I don't know anybody that puts their pool in thinking about selling, right? Like that's typically not an investment you make
Exactly.
with selling in your mind. So, that's the answer to that's probably always going to be yes. Yeah, I'm
Right.
gonna get my enjoyment out of that because I'm not selling. That's the reason I'm putting this pool in.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
But then there's going to be some neighborhoods or some houses, you build a $1.5 million house in a neighborhood around here, you're probably going to need to have a pool.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So if you don't have it, you're the weirdo,
Right.
right?
Well, and you're gonna kind of kill your value in that neighborhood because that's the expectation.
Yeah. I always like to tell people though, think about value versus curb appeal, and is what you're doing actually going to add value, or is it necessary because
And the sweet
trash
spot's
hitter?
both, right? Like
Right.
that's kind of the sweet spot. But I don't think people realize how easily you can spruce some curb appeal up. Getting some of these things that you've neglected for a while aren't near as expensive as you think,
Yeah.
and the benefit that can make. Like I get, nobody wants to write an $800 check to have the landscaper come out and redo their beds or whatever, but
That makes as much a difference as anything else.
anything else. And when you're talking about $800 out of your $500,000 sale that we're trying to make, if I can get you 10 grand extra because this thing's a hopping property,
Mhm.
that $800 isn't going to.
Or even not lose 10 grand.
Right.
Right. And that's the other thing I tell people, especially like with the carpet and stuff like that. All right, you got a quote here for $4,800 to put carpet in here.
Mhm.
Okay. Your house needs carpet. If I'm a buyer, I'm walking through there, I'm saying, oh, this house needs carpet because it needs
Mhm.
carpet. I'm going to go not $4,800. I'm going to be like, oh, this is going to be at least $8,000 or $9,000
That's
to
what
put carpet
that's
in
what
here.
I was joking with an agent the other day, and we were like, everything's $10,000.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is,
Right.
right? Everything that you could have done in your house, if they see something that needs done, that's $10,000
That's right.
right off the bat.
That's
Doesn't
right.
matter what it is.
Granite countertops in a 60 square foot kitchen. Oh, it's 10 grand.
10 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Not
more like
1,100.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's less than 2 actually.
Yeah. So I've got a really good granite guy. It's 1,100. I promise.
That's funny. All right. So you think rates are going to come back down by the end of the year?
I do. I think they'll. I think we're going to start seeing it again. I hate getting in the prognostication business, but the things that I look at, and there's a lot of people that disagree, but we're as we get into next month, we're really going to overlap the inflation numbers. So I think the Fed is going to finally calm down. Things are still going to be expensive. Nothing's going to be cheaper. We're not going to see deflation, but just the fact that we're going up against last year's 8, 9, 10%, just the nature of it, we're going to drop down to 2, 3. And I think that's going to calm the Fed down. And then I think once that happens, the crazy thing about mortgage rates right now for me, in my mind, has been the total disconnect from the 10-year. Like if you look at a chart of the 10-year, they move in sync just like this until right now. And they're like this, and so, and I think, I was talking to Brian Nail and I've talked to some other folks, and, that has to do with liquidity and volatility and all. But once the Fed kind of stops, then the volatility stops. And I think that number starts coming back together. They get back in line. Like, I don't think we're forever in a place where the gap between the 10-year and the mortgage rates are 3%, because they're typically 1.5 to 2.
Right.
So even if the 10-year didn't go down, if it just got back to normal gap between them, then we would naturally come back to that 5. If we got back to the treasury yield today, if it was 2% gap, which is on the high side of that where they mirror each other. Normally it's about 1.5, 1.75. Then all of a sudden we're down at 2.5% because we're treasury yields at 3.4 today. So if we could get back to even that 2% gap, we'd be at 5.5. And I think that's got to happen.
To me, that is the healthy number, right? I think it sits in the 5s somewhere, and maybe occasionally dips to 4.75, and maybe it's a really bad month or whatever, and it goes to 6 flat or something.
Right.
To me, that is the healthy spot where we would thrive, right? That starts getting us back to a normal position. It makes affordability happen again. And I think, to your point, you said this earlier, I think we are going to see a little bit of a rush this spring. I think people are finally coming around to the idea that if we save up a little bit more, and they've been doing that for a few months now, we pay it down a little, we finance a little bit less, right?
Mhm.
And we've finally gotten the message out there. Look, you can at some point refinance this rate,
Mhm.
right? And when that happens, people are like, okay, can I stomach this for a year,
Right.
right? Or even 6 months or 16 months or whatever. Can I stomach this for a little bit of time, in hopes to refi? And I think we'll see people come back in, and hopefully they'll have houses to sell. They're not all just they're not all renting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's hope. A lot of the stuff that's just, well, I guess they cancel it again now, though. There were some really good things happening for first time buyers too for those rentals. That was the other thing that I thought was going to make this challenging, where the rates got so low
Mm-hmm.
for first time buyers that they were going to be, for the first time, really kind of at an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll see. I think they pushed pause on that. I heard last week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's going to be an interesting summer. I think it's going to be pretty busy, but I think us, the realtors of the world, are going to think it's awful, because I do think there are going to be fewer transactions, right? There's going to be less of us getting paid.
Well, for
And
sure.
so,
This number right here, April to April 2023 back to 2022, 31% fewer closings.
right. And April was kind of hopefully an anomaly, because March shot way up. March was almost back to March of 2022.
Mhm.
April, I think there were a lot of things. There were rate spikes.
I think it was down 3% was the March number.
Yeah, it was really close.
Mhm.
So we'll see. But yeah, I think if you let a realtor tell you what this summer's going to be like, they're probably going to be down on the market, because there will be fewer transactions. But I think for your sellers, I think they're going to be in a really good place, and I think it's going to be challenging for buyers, just purely based off inventory.
Can I say something in confidence? I don't want anybody else to know that I said this.
Okay.
Okay. I'm hoping that everything you just said leads to a downward arrow and double-digit percentage for number of licensees.
We're not supposed to say that.
Did I
but-
say that?
No, I didn't hear it at all.
Okay.
I mean, I get kind of torn on that. I feel bad saying it, because I've only been doing this 5 years. So 5 years ago, somebody was saying that about me.
I didn't say new
know.
agents. I did not. Look, there are some great, talented, should be in this industry new agents.
That's fair.
I did not say that. I'm saying just in general, there's a lot of us,
There are.
and some of us shouldn't be in this
Nope.
business anymore.
It's a low bar of entry, unfortunately.
It is, and an even lower bar of staying.
Well, and I guess that's the reason they can justify the low bar of entry, right? Because it's a low bar of success too. But it's the fact of the matter is that those people that don't succeed are still damaging the business for the short time that they're in it. Is unfortunate.
That's right, because
So-
they're obligating some of my former clients to use them, because Thanksgiving dinner tastes weird without doing that.
Yeah, and I don't even mind that as much as I just when I see people go through, when I see the ones that don't belong in the business, I don't even mind that they're taking transactions away from me necessarily, as much as what they do to the reputation of the business. The people that are like realtors, or we're so far down on the
Mhm.
survey, and I don't think that that's your career realtors that put us there, or that your long-term people that make it that put us there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
you're right. I'm being a little bit facetious, but only a little bitter.
Oh no, I mean, like, it hurts when it happens. I get it, but long term, I just wish that we had a little bit more of a.
Well, and ultimately, think about it this way. Okay, I'm a guy that if I'm not the right person for you, I'm going to tell you I'm not the
Mhm.
right person, and I'll either refer you to somebody that you can go interview instead. And maybe it's geographics, maybe it's timing, maybe it's a personality thing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But I'm going to tell you that. What I worry about is the ones that are like, come on, man, please let me do this deal for you. Let me,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm your cousin, come on, let me do this deal. And then they're in this weird position, that client's in that weird position where, like, no, I would really rather hire somebody that knows what they're doing,
Right.
but they can't, because Thanksgiving dinner tastes funny.
Yep.
You know,
And it happens every day. And I'm there are people out there that feel that way about me. I know they do, because when I started dating Chrissy, her dad has rentals and buys and sells, and there's an agent out there that lost their client because and that's unfortunate for them. But
but you
It-
also filled that gap without being a dud.
Right.
Like, you're not a dud,
right. So
as far as I know.
I mean, most days I try to show up,
Yeah.
do my
that's it.
thing. But yeah, no, there's always going to be that. I lost one last year to a client. He was getting married, and new fiance's best friend was a new licensee, and I was like, no.
Tell me how that works out for you.
Oh, I can tell you the story. I'll do that off air.
Yeah. Let's talk off air for sure on that one. All right. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you'd like to know, any specifics, obviously we are at your disposal. Call the J Harmon Home Team, and if for whatever reason I don't answer, call Brad because he's a pretty good dude too. I'm a fan. That's it. Trent, what else? You got anything?
I don't. Good stuff.
Yep, it is. It is definitely going to be interesting. I wish there was a way to dramatize it a little bit without being super campy,
Yeah.
and make a show out of this, because it's very interesting what's happened over the last 12 to 15 months.
Yeah.
As far as how rates have affected. I love the analogy. I used to teach economics, and I just tell people economics and economies, if you will, are psychology with dollar signs.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So it's you mentioned this, the volatility, all of those things, that gap between the 10-year and all that. It's fear.
Oh yeah.
It is quantified fear is what that is.
Absolutely.
And that's just interesting.
Well, and that's why I think once the Fed finally stops and does that pause, the fear starts kind of subsiding, right?
Yeah.
Assuming we don't hit. Let me add one more thing. We run off this debt cliff. I don't have a clue what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother animal. If we crash that car, then everything I said is wrong.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that's the that's the unfortunate part about it. There's always a next big something. We don't know what it is, but there's always like who would have predicted COVID in 2019 when we were just rocking and rolling?
Well, and
everything
when it started, everybody was like, oh.
I mean, I remember I was in my office, and I've got a TV in my office, and I was watching the stock market just plummet. And guy in my office came by, and he's like, I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, I mean, it's a virus, whatever. It's early, right? This was like end of February, early March or whatever. And I was like, well, what happens when nobody will let us in their houses because they're all freaked out about this? And he's like, oh. And there was like a 2-month period where like showings. I remember I had a sweet listing in Berkshire that I was just like, oh, this thing's gonna be gone. And literally the day we hit the market, March 13th. And if you remember March 13th, that was the day the world shut down. It's like when the kids came home from school and never
March
went
12th,
back.
I was at a grand opening for Carpe Artista. I was surrounded by like 100 people, and I'm like, oh well, okay.
I went on a cruise the first week of March that year,
Nice.
but it was we had our office cruise, like our exit cruise, and we were like, should we go? Should we not go? Because at that point, the only place it was cruise ships, right? And we were like, well, they were all on the West Coast. We're leaving out on whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I was really excited about that listing, and like March 13th, we went live. The kids came home from school, never went back. We sat there in open houses, like just.
I did video open houses.
Yeah, we did everything we could. Well, and it was weird because the homeowner couldn't leave.
Right.
So like she sat there. She was a friend, so she sat there with open houses with me, and we played cards and stuff. Nobody came through. Like it was weird. And then like 2 months later, here we go.
And honestly, it came back with a vengeance.
Oh,
yeah. It was
in ways unexpected.
Yeah,
so.
It was wild. Well, we'll see what happens. Like you said, it's sort of like the old movies, right? So we've been dealing with Godzilla, and then now here comes Mothra, and then
so we'll see
Rodan's on his way.
We'll see what the next one is. But
so all right, always a pleasure. Brad Hopkins, Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates. Call our friend Brian Nail if you have mortgage needs. Call one of us if you have real estate needs. Call Trent if you have a story to tell.
Yes, please do.
Trent, what's the coolest story you heard last week?
Oh man,
in 30 seconds.
Man, on the spot like that.
Yes, sir.
Honestly, I got prophesized over on Saturday.
And tell me more.
It was wild. We were in this room, and this guy that I've been doing the Coach's Health Show with Coach Scott with LT 360, Jack Christians, man. He was here in studio with my good friend, Dr. Jen Massey. She's a physical therapist, and Genergy for life. But yeah, we had an incredible session here on Saturday. It's hard to put into words, man. It was really, really cool.
really cool, the stuff he was saying.
That's
And
awesome.
It was some confirmation on some stuff that I was been working through, man. So it was a cool experience.
That's very cool.
Yeah, man.
What's the coolest story from you for last week?
Man, my youngest graduated high school,
Yes,
so
let's
that
go.
was like,
Congratulations.
so
Big Ev.
so call me for your real estate needs because I have
You
to put a
gotta-
kid through college starting next month, and
I'm just sitting here thinking, man, you're old.
I am old. I know. I've got the first one starts grad school, and the youngest
Yo.
one, and then of course, well, I've got the 2 bonus ones now too. So
Right.
we'll only have 4 kids to put through college. So,
Hey,
yeah,
I'm in
yeah.
the same boat, dude. So I've got 10, 11, 12, 16.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
we're right about the same. So I've got 13, 16 bonus kids that mine were 18 and 20, about to turn 23 this
Yeah.
month. So it's
But when they're done, it's going to be great.
you think? I don't know. I keep thinking done just keeps kind of
Getting kicked down the road.
extending. I don't know when done is anymore. No, I'm excited for him. I say it all the time. Like, I don't know how I did it. I've been blessed with incredibly easy, like good kids, like easy going, hadn't caused any trouble.
Mhm.
They're probably going to go be hellions in college because
That's all right.
the yin and yang of whatever.
Hey, 18, it's your
but,
problem, kid.
yeah. No, I'm proud of him. He's heading to UTC in the fall, and
Go Mox.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Good for him.
He's going to be a mock. So yeah, but that was exciting. So
Very cool. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you again real soon.
thanks for having me.